get an opportunity to interview a cat. Really, I consider first tier Detroit rock lineage. It's been cathartic to connect with his brother Dallas. I feel very loyal to these guys, even though obviously I wasn't even conceived when they were, starting their careers. And but I got a chance today to speak to a man who, very sophisticated musician, always knew his strengths, never tried to go outside of his wheelhouse. Really funky cat, and what an honor. Catfish Hodge, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Well, thank you, Jake.
It's an honor.
You're in Tucson, huh?
Yes, sir, man.
Alice Cooper still live there?
Who?
Alice Cooper.
I didn't even know he lived out here.
Oh, for a long time.
He came here recently to play, so I don't think he is living out here,
Oh, maybe not. Maybe he moved.
Catfish, I wanted to start by asking you a question about, where did you hear horn arrangements in your head? Were you primarily responsible for the horn arrangements on your studio and live records?
Well, I was responsible for how they turned out. Growing up in Detroit, my brother and I, we had a band that called the Hodge Brothers that had a 4-piece horn section. Actually, that was in California after we moved out there. But I'm not, I don't want to take credit for a lot of those horn arrangements on my albums because other musicians, horn players help put that together.
I was going to say, because absolutely, as far as the, those guys, I guess more to the point, what were you hearing in your ears? I know you were basking in Motown and things like that, but as far as street music or street experiential, raw, indigenous Detroit music, what was your exposure to that as a kid, and how did that affect you as an artist?
Actually, I think was affected more by Motown music at the time growing up, and the Stones and Beatles, just like a lot of folks who were growing up in the '60s.
I guess in general, can you just talk about the earliest memories you have of playing music and seeing your I think it was your grandfather.
Yeah. I was out of high school when I started bands. Right around, I graduated in '64 from Southeastern High. So, but the horn sections that I got were from musicians I met that were playing in other club bands in the Detroit area, and they took a liking to me, and we started playing together. I started going to the jams. But the real break came with the Catfish band, and that wasn't a horn band. But it was a great group of guys, and I can't remember the guy's name now, the president of Epic Records.
President?
Yeah. At the time, he was. Wow.
You know what it is? Your music is so funky, man. It's some of the funkiest music I've ever, through and through. And I just wonder what...
Well, but it's funky because that's just part of me.
That's what I'm saying.
And that's also a backdrop to growing up in the east side of Detroit. The first Catfish Hodge album on Westbound with Boogeyman Gonna Get You on it was recorded in Toronto. And I'm trying to think of the producer's name now. He passed away. He was a black man that was one of the singers in Parliament Funkadelics. And
we're going to have to do a deep dive on that, yeah.
When I came up to Toronto to record that album, he had gathered some horn players from. There was a great Canadian band at the time. I can't think of their names now.
It's okay.
They had a 4-piece horn section, and it was really good. And we got some good horn players that, after we cut the tracks, to come and play on it. And, he did, rather. And that opened my ears and eyes and heart open to the music with the horn sound on it.
I just want to read this from my interview with Dallas. He said when we lived on Fairview Street on the east side of Detroit, there was a bar on the corner where my brother and I got introduced to John Lee Hooker. He used to play.
Oh, we got introduced to all kinds of musicians.
His name for your mom was Chica. I just want you to just riff on your mom for a minute. What a badass she was.
Well, she was. Ma Hodge was great, and she was very supportive.
I feel her spirit deeply inside of me. Like I feel her. She was a spirit. She did. Did she play music too, or she just was a fanatic?
She sang.
She sang.
She did some singing. In fact, if you go on, I think it's YouTube, and you look around, there's actually some recordings of Ma and Pa Hodge. If you Google Ma and Pa Hodge singing.
That is so beautiful that there's audio of that or video.
Yeah.
That is great, man. I love it. Yeah, he said
you don't know Alice Cooper.
No, man. No.
You never heard of the band, the Alice Cooper band?
Of course.
Yeah.
No, I'm very hip to who he is, but I no.
Well, I met him I met him when the Boogeyman band was recording in Toronto, and we used the horn players. There was another Canadian band, horn band, that ended up being managed by the same guy, Benny Fusco.
Was it called Lighthouse? Lighthouse?
Yeah.
Yeah, Lighthouse. Yeah, that was it. Skip Propak.
Huh?
Yeah, no, the drummer Skip Propak. Yeah, no, that was the horn band out of Toronto.
Oh, okay.
B.B. King's nickname for your mom was Chica. I mean, basically.
I always thought he called her Sweet Rose.
Oh, I love it, man. No, I want you to just talk about this. This is so important. He goes, Dallas said, my grandfather, Hiram, on my mom's side was a Baptist minister. He played 33 instruments, all the string instruments, some woodwinds. He passed 3 months before I was born, but I heard lots about him. He lived down in a little place called Denton, Kentucky.
Kentucky, little farm down there, him and Virgie, my grandmother.
He said Lester Flatt and Earl Scruggs would stop by on Sundays and start picking, man. I need you to, please tell me.
Well, when I was in junior high, he was still alive. And Mom and Pa would drive me down to Denton, Kentucky to their farm for summer vacation. And then they'd leave me so they could go travel around, I guess. And then they'd come back and get me. So I got to know them. Virgie was amazing. So was Hiram. And Virgie had a brother named Grundy who lived in that farmhouse with him.
Grundy?
Yep.
Wow. Were you ever privy? I mean, he said Graham would make big pot of potatoes, fried chicken, fresh green beans out of the garden. Lester and Earl Scruggs would come over every once in a while.
And her biscuits and cornbread were amazing.
Dude, I love this family so much, man. Can you just tell me a good story about your grandma?
Oh. Nothing's coming to mind just right now. She was just a really sweet and wonderful lady, but who grew up in Legan, Kentucky. It was a coal mining town. And when I was a little boy, I think way before Dallas was born, we went to Legan, Kentucky, Ma and Pa Hodge and me, in the summertime or whatever, for Christmas a couple times. And Legan, Kentucky was a coal mining town. That's where my Uncle Grundy and a couple other Uncle Cecil and Tennis they all worked in that area. And it was by the time I was old enough to really grasp all of it, they had moved to Denton, Kentucky.
Did you pick up instruments when you were at their house? Were you playing at that point? Even not,
I don't know if I did. I don't think so.
So you got to Detroit, and what was the?
I grew up in Detroit.
That exactly. So, I mean, when did you?
Well, Ma had a guitar.
Right.
Her and Pa would play and sing. And I started learning, and Ma had a brother or cousin named Tennis, and he played pretty good too. And for a period of time, he rented the upstairs loft in their house in Detroit. And I'd go up and listen to him play, and he'd show me a few chords. I was in junior high by then, I think, or towards the end of going to junior high. So 6th grade, 7th grade. Wow, flashback.
I love this, dude. Does the name Joe Podorczyk mean anything to you?
It rings a bell, but I don't know why. And that's one of the names Dallas talked about?
No, Ted Nugent, when I interviewed him, he talked about...
Oh.
Yeah, he was a teacher, but like a very, very influential teacher in the Detroit area. I'm just trying to figure out, like, Catfish, like, when the East Side Lounge, how did you integrate into that? To me, it's, I read somewhere that, like, Seeger, I feel like you were on the scene from the beginning.
There was a guy named Dave Leone, and he owned partnership in a booking agency called Diversified Management Agency, DMA. And at one time he had Bob Seeger, he booked Ted Nugent and the Amboy Dukes,
Right.
Catfish Band, Bob Hodge,
Wow.
the Rationals.
I knew it.
And that's how I got to know them more. We had functions like from the agency, or run into them when I went in to pick up a balance or check or whatever, sign a contract.
Can you talk about, like, how you assimilated from just sort of learning the chords from, was it Uncle Tennis?
Yeah, and Ma and Pa Hodge, too.
So when your parents would leave you with your grandparents, were they playing a lot of music on the road, do you think? I mean, they
Not a lot, but they brought a guitar.
Right. And
acoustic guitar.
They were more from the folk aesthetic.
Yeah.
How did they feel about you plugging in, you and your brother?
They loved it.
This is so beautiful.
They loved it all their lives.
Oh, man.
I mean, Ma died way before Pa did. Pa was 94 when he died. He lived a long time. He went out, Dallas moved him out to California and lived with Dallas and Peg and his family.
I'm sort of just going on a limb here, but did you ever see or play with Washboard Willie?
I've heard of him, and I remembered hearing him.
Yeah.
But I've never played with him.
So, the story...
I played with Sonny Terry and Brownie McGee.
Tell me about that.
Oh, it was fun. I had built up somewhat of a marquee name with the Hodge brothers and with Wicked Religion and the Catfish Band, and so I was able to go and play with some of these other guys that I'd heard about for years, and they'd heard about me, and they said, "Hey, you want to come sit in?" That was a big thing back then, going to because they all played clubs, most of them. Then they started doing concerts. The Grandy Ballroom. Have you heard of that?
In Detroit?
Yeah.
That it's the first time I've heard of that place. I mean, I've interviewed so many of these. Did you? Not that you were like.
What? Google it.
I would no.
Grandy Ballroom.
I will
Detroit,
totally no. I absolutely will. I mean, I just wonder. I'm like, my dream. Like I'm listening to like literally my favorite tune is "Don't Tell Your Mother She's Out of Tune."
Never tell your mother.
Never tell your mother she's out of tune, and it's like a raging song. It's like a raging. Like that could go up against anything that Tower Power was doing at the time on the West Coast, but it was like with a Detroit feel. It's burning music. I go back to this idea of like, what is that sound? What in your head that has been going on throughout your career that allows you to sort of get to that point where, you can carry a song for 9 minutes, mainly vocally, and still make it interesting.
I have no idea. It was a gift that I was blessed with.
Did you tap into it right away, or did you sort of like have to? Was there a sort of a definitive moment?
Well, I started out learning songs like everybody else that starts bands when they're in high school, or, junior high, or whatever. You learn the Beatles songs, you learn Stone songs, whoever it was. Eric Burden and the Animals. I remember once doing a gig where I opened for Eric Burden and the Animals at the East Town Theater or the Grandy Ballroom. I think it was the Grandy Ballroom. And we were in the dressing room, and Eric Burden said, "Are you Catfish?" I was going by Catfish then. "Are you Rose Hodge's son?" And I was shocked. I said, "Yeah, how do you know?" He said, "Oh, we met her a long time ago."
Whoa.
She's great.
Whoa.
I mean, Johnny Winters, they were really... she saved Johnny Winters' life. She got him to go and turn himself in and get off of drugs and alcohol.
This was a
But
powerful...
Johnny Winters ended up at their house because him and I played a gig together.
You got at the Grandy, or where did you guys?
Yeah, it might have been the East Town Theater, and Ma cooked up one of her Kentucky meals with biscuits and gravy and everything.
Oh my God, dude! I want to be there, man.
And Johnny Winters said, "I love it, man."
Oh man, this is so great, man. I mean, dude. Can you talk about the this is a question I had actually early on before you were a leader. Did you ever go on the Chitlin circuit in Canada, or any kind of did you go on tour with any bands?
No.
You started Catfish Hodge.
Yes.
And that was...
Well, yeah. It started in the Catfish band. Because when the Catfish band first got a record deal with Epic Records, with Clive Davis and Larry Cohen, the A&R head of Columbia and Epic, it was a guy named Ken Cooper, who was a young producer, who was living in New York, and he talked them into coming to the, I want to say it was the Electric Circus. It was one of those clubs in the Village. I can't think of the name of it now. It wasn't the Electric Circus, but...
No, but dude, I can't believe you just dropped that name, because that was that was the hippest club ever.
Oh, what, the Electric Circus?
Well, I mean, yeah, that's a Catfish band special. Did you play there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that place was, I mean, Dreams played there, Billy Cobham, Randy Brecker, rock bands played there. It was very, very hip place.
Fillmore East was hip, too. That was the main room.
You're telling me Catfish played Fillmore East?
Oh, yeah, we played there opening for, who was it? Might have been Savoy Brown. It was a British band. And the dressing rooms at the Fillmore were up these stairs off the side of the stage. Like, you had to walk up 4 flights of stairs. And so the opening act, which was us then, they put you in the top dressing room, so you'd have the longest walk.
Oh man, that is. Wait, so you opened for? So what was it? What was that experience? Well, I mean, that must. Who and
Oh, it was good. It was
yeah.
good times. It was a good crowd, good audience, good band. They were good bands, and it opened up the doorways.
This is the thing. I'm curious about. Like, were you able to see James Jamerson play like upright bass at all, or Benny Benjamin? Like, to me, like that's.
Oh, you mean from the Motown band?
Well, yeah, I mean, because like to me, like you're like one of the greasiest players. Like it's a greasy feel. Everything is there's grease everywhere, and like that came from Benny Benjamin and Van Dyke and Jamerson. But Bobby Hall, the great percussionist, told me that she would in the studio see Jamerson play upright.
Uh-huh.
So I'm just wondering, like that groove. You were obviously born with a gift to sing, but how did that groove lend itself to sort of the types of germs of songs that you came up with?
Oh God. The Catfish band on Epic was a rock and roll high energy band. By the time I got to Westbound, Eastbound, and had Boogeyman Gonna Get You,
Yeah.
Calvin Simon from the Funkadelics, did you ever hear of him?
No.
He was one of the singers in the Funkadelics.
Mm-hmm.
Calvin was assigned by the head of Westbound, Eastbound Records to produce the Catfish band, Catfish Hodge, after the Catfish band.
Wow.
I kept my name and added a lot of musicians that I'd known for a long time, still know. Most of them live in California or the South now, but.
Well, I was going to ask you about how you connected with that original rhythm. How did you form that first band, those relationships? Because this is so intoxicating for me because I really have. I mean, I've interviewed Hal Blaine. I've interviewed Bernard Purdy, Chuck Rainey.
Well, back then, in the 60s, early radio DJs, CKLW in Canada, in Windsor, across the river from Detroit, was one of the most powerful stations in 4 or 5 states. Their station reached, when I first started going on the road touring with the Catfish band, I realized we could pick up CKLW on our car radio in Ohio, in Kentucky, in Indiana, Illinois, and I didn't know that until. So Armin Baladian, the head of Westbound Eastbound, when he first put out a Catfish Hodge album and a record, he had established quite a strong rapport because of the Funkadelics and different bands he had the hit albums with right before, And the Funkadelics, they weren't going to be on. CKLW was like a white teen bop radio station. I don't know if that's correct way to say it, but
right, I did, yeah.
But with what Armin did is he got, the bands that were on Eastbound, Westbound, Parliament Funkadelics, George Clinton, that's his name. You ever hear of George Clinton?
I've interviewed George. We had a ball. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, but I wasn't hip to the guy who was your producer, though, not his name.
Oh, that was Calvin Simon. He was one of the singers in George Clinton.
Yeah, no, I'm not that hip to. I know George. I mean, the 20 grand, and that going. I mean, that dude is so psychedelicized. I love him so much, man. So like, I'm curious about like in that early Catfish on Eastbound. What did that cat do as a producer that enhanced the album as opposed to like just your own creative imprint?
Oh, he just brought us all together.
What does that mean?
Good mix.
What is
good
that?
Energy.
Oh, okay. I mean, like everybody hit at one time.
Pretty much.
Yeah, there was no overdubs, right?
Oh, there were overdubs. In fact, I could overdub in Detroit too, but where that first started really getting strong was on the Boogeyman Gonna Get You album that we recorded in Toronto.
Wow.
With Calvin producing. And he, of course, a lot of the Funkadelics were living in that area then in Toronto. And then there was Lighthouse, which was a band from Canada.
Right.
And they had a lot of horn players. So the next thing I know, I was going to the studio for a mixing section, driving up from Detroit. I didn't fly or take the train then. Took the train one time. And Calvin says, I want you to hear this, Fish. And he put it on, and I went, what the fuck? Who's playing that? Who's that horn section? He goes, that's the members of Lighthouse.
Oh, my God.
You heard of them? I said, hell yeah, I've heard of them. He said, well, we have some connections up here. So they, got them, paid them good to come in and record on the record.
Wow. The band that played at the East Side Lounge, was a quartet, or was there a horn section in that band as well?
Wait a minute. Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hello?
Fish.
Yeah.
You hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can hear you now. I put you on speakerphone.
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm tired.
I was curious about the ability. This is this is really important because he's been in my soul all day. Please tell me about your first memory that comes to your mind of Paul Barrère.
Oh, well, that's easy. Little Feat.
Yeah, but I mean, I mean, those guys, like.
This is when the guys were still alive.
No, totally. And what I'm saying is that early on, they were
really big in D.C. And I had moved from Virginia to make a home, lived in a log cabin outside of D.C. in Virginia. And the guy who was managing me then, Mike Schreiben, he was a concert promoter, New Era Concerts. And he did a show with Little Feat, this band called Little Feat, and they were getting airplay on the radio there, the FM stations. And he said, I want you to open for him at the Warner Theater. I said, wow. Warner Theater is like about
that is so feet. Awesome, dude. Wait a minute. Hold on for a second. Hold on. I want to. Yeah. Hold on. Before you go any farther, how did you go from you're in the wilderness in a cabin to being connected to you had a connection to the music industry within the D.C. area?
Oh, I already had that from touring and playing gigs when I was living in Detroit.
Okay. And so
I really enjoyed and was inspired by the musical community, who Mike Schreiben was a big part of. And Mike Schreiben had a company called New Era Concerts, and they promoted a lot of big shows.
Wow.
And helped bands put together on the road, traveling. And that's how I met Little Feat. Actually, the first show wasn't the Warner Theater. It was at Lisner Auditorium, which is on the property of George Washington University, I think. And that's how I first met Paul. And then I just kind of knew him. And I would be opening shows for them ever so often, playing solo. And then when I moved from Virginia to California, got to know him better, and then Little Feat was, dispensing. Lola died, and there was a couple other guys that were, and Paul and I started doing the Blues Busters, and when we first started doing it, we went out as a duet. And Paul Barrère had never done anything like that. He's always been with a big band of instruments, like Little Feat. And he had a following from Little Feat. I had my following, and it worked together. And we didn't play, the 3,000 seat theaters unless we were opening for a bigger band. But we played a lot. That's when clubs were really happening.
I mean,
You know,
to me, like, it must, because you were playing with, all the cats. I've interviewed Kenny Gradney, Lowell, those guys. But like you and like Bonnie.
Did you interview Kenny Gradney?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna send you. You give me your email after this. I'll send you all. You're gonna love these interviews, dude. These are legendary interviews, and like the point is that I'm like, this is so. This is just. How much do you feel that? How did the mechanization of rhythm?
I need to get my cigarettes. My wife just brought me a Coke out in the garage.
Oh no, you need a Coke, man.
That's what I'm getting it.
Yeah.
Cold. Good.
Do you feel that? Well, I want to touch on something. Like, how early? Sometimes I listen to some of the.
I already had Marquis as Catfish Hodge when I met Little Pete and started opening for him. And thank you, hon. You there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, when we decided that, it started by doing some all-star bands that I would put together once a year. And I started out doing it with local musicians, like the guys from the Nighthawks, Bill Holland on keyboards and vocals.
Wow.
And some of Rude Boy Slim's musicians.
Wow.
But I had built up a marquee value. And part of it was for opening for Little Feat and Bonnie Raitt.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Those cats, like, to be able to open for those kind of, like, at the time, Richie Hayward, man. But I know that you guys, can you talk about your band and, like, ultimately, like, to me, I feel like I'd almost be coming to see the Catfish band.
I haven't thought about Richie lately, and it was hard when he passed away, but.
No, because I remember Billy Payne. I'm not sure if you ever played with him, but.
Oh yeah.
He was like telling.
But not as much. Not like the guys I played with.
I know.
From the Little Feat when I started the All-Star bands.
So cool.
Paul Barrere on guitar, Richie Hayward on drums. I played with Sam Clayton, was playing congas, percussion. But Bill Payne had something else to do, but he was never in on it.
No, but he said that, like, there was a show at the Rainbow Theater that, like, Richie could never play the same thing once. He could never repeat it, and it would drive Lowell crazy. And one night they, like, after the show, like, they're going backstage and, like, Lowell and him are, like, going to blows. And Billy's like, guys, listen to the freaking crowd, man. And they're going nuts. He's like, I think they like it, man. What are you so freaking uptight about? Like, that band, that group of guys, Fred Tackett as well. It's a huge sign of respect on both sides that you linked up with them and they saw what you brought to the table and vice versa. And the fact that you were able to put together a band with those guys. Barrere to me, that dude was sneaking into the IT Club in Hollywood to see Ahmad Jamal when he was, growing up,
Yeah.
But it continues to, like, did you, part of me wants to believe that Catfish, maybe you weren't sitting in, but you were going to, did you ever go to Baker's Keyboard Lounge? What was the...
Oh, yeah, sure. That was a jazz club. I played Baker's once.
Wow.
Solo. I can't remember who it was with, but... and there was another one, and I can't think of the name of it now, but it was on Livernois and 6 Mile, and it was a coffee house club. It did a lot of different concerts, bands. And back then I was working for a finance company called HFC, and my office was right next door to this club. So I would leave it on a Friday or Saturday from work, and I'd walk past it to the parking lot where the cars were, and my car, and I'd hear all these great bands. That's how I discovered Paul Butterfield.
Really?
His Paul Butterfield Blues Band was playing it at the, God, I can't think of the name of the place.
We're going to have to do a lot of deep dives after this, man. So you discovered Butter, that was when like Elvin Bishop was in the band, like the early incarnation? Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Bloomfield and those cats.
And who was the drummer? Great drummer.
Sam Lay, maybe?
What is it?
Sam Lay.
Sam Lay. Yeah, I knew Sam pretty well.
Wow. Who was your go-to drummer? Like, I mean, to me, like, this is to me the most.
Detroit?
Yeah, like that early gritty Catfish group, man.
Larry Zach.
Okay, so Larry played.
Times he lives out west.
No, I've done a couple interviews with him. And
okay.
And you know,
when Larry joined my band, playing in the basement at Ma and Pa Hodge's house, he was just a sophomore at Hamtramck High School.
Right. There was a big age difference between you and him.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he sort of played it off. I have to go back and listen to the interview, but it seemed to me that he caught you later after your career had already started.
That he what?
He sort of intimated that he started playing with you after you had already been established as a professional.
Well, I did have an audience. I built up a marquee value.
So that band, that's the band I want to talk about. Is the pre-Larry.
Yeah, well, that was Dallas Hodge.
Dallas Hodge. How old was Dallas?
He must have been 14, 15.
Wow.
And I'm 9 years older than him.
Wow.
But when I started out, we had a Pa Hodge and Ma set up a rehearsal room down in the basement on Fairview Street. And that's how I met Larry Zach. He was going to Hamtramck, and he was also, there was a guy named Ron Casaida. Did you ever hear him?
No.
Very, very hot guitar player.
Wow. I've never heard of that cat.
And Larry got a break with him for a little while because his drummer was sick, Vince. And history.
Hey, Fish, I want to ask you: Did you gain a name for yourself as a solo artist early on?
No.
So who?
Well, I did as Catfish Hodge. But when I first got my big break with a record company with Epic Records out of New York, it was the Catfish Band. And there were musicians that were all around. I met this producer who lived out of, produced for Columbia Epic, Ken Cooper.
Yeah.
And he said, we could get you I could get something going for you. So Mark Manco, the guitar player, was in another band from Detroit with Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels.
Sure.
And so was Ron Cook at the time. And Mitch had just disbanded the band and was taking a break or whatever. And I met him because we'd opened shows for Mitch. Back in those days, the big gigs were Friday and Saturday night record hops. There was a big one that was called Notre Dame Record Hop, Notre Dame High School.
Wow. Wow.
And every once in a while, I'll run into somebody who will say, I saw you at Notre Dame. I saw you before you were Catfish.
Wow. Just Bob Hodge. Did you play Cobo Hall at all?
I played Cobo Hall one time, and I can't remember who it was opening for.
Was that like a bigger venue? Like, I mean, to me, like.
Oh yeah. That was 4,000 or 5,000 seats.
So Fish was like, So yeah, no, Crook, the drummer, that cat. Who was that cat?
No, Ron Cook was the bass player.
Bass. So he was your first bass player?
Yeah, the drummer was Jimmy Opner. He was actually from New York, but he had come to school in the Michigan area and was playing with different bands. And actually, our manager at the time, Vinny Fusco, was managing another band out of the New York area that Jimmy Opner had played with.
Wow.
He said this band just broke up, and there's a great drummer I can put with you. And that's how we met, and that was good. That was right before the records came out on Columbia Epic, and they were starting to make some noise.
Would you say you were able to get radio play on the East Coast, and there was a tour? Like, can you talk a little bit about the domestic touring circuit? Did you head east, or did you actually were able to go across the whole country?
Well, at one point we were able to go across the country touring, but most of all, back in those days, we were playing the Midwest and the East Coast, some up into Ontario. And it grew and grew.
Where did you play? Would you play the Village Gate in New York, or where would you play?
Oh, the Village Gate?
I'm just trying to think of
what was the name of that place? It was a legendary club in the Greenwich Village.
Folk City.
Folk City was one of them, but there was another club that a guy opened up, and that's where I played. That's
like the Gaslight, not the Gaslight.
I met Richie Havens. I was opening for him at it.
Oh, Cafe Go-Go.
Cafe, that might be it. Yeah.
Wow, you play a Cafe Go-Go?
Yeah.
Oh, that is so classic, dude. So, I mean, did you get radio play in New York? How would you get wind of the idea of, like, to me, like, the most magical thing about your era of musicians is just that you were able to actually, like, hear your art on regional radio, which is just one of the more magical things. And I remember I've interviewed Brian Auger from the Oblivion Express a bunch, and he was like, somehow in Cleveland, the Oblivion Express caught fire on the radio station there, so they got this cult following. And I'm like, I know that Catfish had a cult following in other states outside of Michigan.
Well, you know that Brian Auger and I played together a couple tours.
No, I didn't. To me, this just warms my heart, dude. This is just.
Well, yeah, it was the Blues Busters, and T. Lavitz was the keyboard player from the Dixie Dregs out of Atlanta. And he passed away. Had some other stuff going on, and then he passed away with health. But I had met Brian Auger at a jam session in Santa Monica, and I knew who he was. And he said, "I know who you are." So I called him up and said, the Blues Busters are touring, and he'd seen the Blues Busters play at McCabe's Guitar Shop.
Beautiful.
And we became friends and played music together quite a while. But he'd already built a name for himself in England and over here.
Oh, man. Ferocious. Did you see that band back in the day? The Oblivion Express? Wow. You know, that is just... I need you to talk... I mean, I'm looking at the album right now. Part of me wants to believe that you brought all these cats in, but it's one of the funkiest records. Eyewitness Blues. Please... This was America at one time. You're in a studio, you overtook the new studio, and it's basically, I've never heard of any of these cats on this record.
Well, there's some of the Nighthawks.
Now, see, I'm not even hip.
You've heard Tom Principato, haven't you?
Say again?
Tom Principato?
Cat.
He has Tom Principato band. He has mini albums out. Quite a big following in Europe. I haven't seen him he's kind of retired now too.
Dwayne Campbell, John Lee.
Oh yeah,
Dave.
John Lee was a drummer. He was a British guy, but he was over in the States, and he was playing with somebody else. I can't remember, and the gig fell through, and a couple of guys knew of him, and I asked him to play, and he came to a couple of gigs, rehearsals, and he was great. And Dwayne Campbell he's still around. He lives up in the Bay Area.
Wow.
And I'll see him every once in a while when I was out there playing some gigs or visiting.
So, I mean, just to see James Cotton, you crossed paths with him when he would play in Detroit, or how did you meet him?
Yeah, at the God, I can't think of the name of the coffee house. Legendary.
I mean, I know the jazz, like Nakarama Club. I mean, there were all these like crazy clubs in Detroit, but I don't know the. Wait a minute, there was one. You know who used to play there was Gordon Lightfoot. I'm going to look this. Yeah, I got to look this up right now because he talked about. I'll get it for you. Yeah, no, it was called The Chessmate or The Living End.
The Chessmate.
The Chessmate. We got it, baby.
Chessmate Coffee House.
The relevance of the Chessmate was
that time at James.
Oh yeah, James Cotton.
James Cotton. That's how I met Elvin Bishop. I'm trying to think of that great drummer that played with James Cotton, and there was all kinds of them. The Chessmate, thank you.
Yeah, baby. You know, we got it, man. And then, like, I mean, through Bonnie Raitt is how you made the original connection with Freebo, because Freebo's been down to Tucson to perform at a school I used to work at, and
I opened shows for Bonnie.
Right.
Her manager, Dick Waterman, who also booked her, knew Mike Schreiber, my manager at the time. And Bonnie had heard about me somehow. So they had me open a show for him in D.C., and we became friends.
I'm figuring, I mean, she was really close with Lowell. Little Feet probably hipped her to you, you know?
I met Lowell and those guys, Little Feet, from opening shows for him. That's how I met Paul Barreras.
It's so beautiful. Paul's spirit is just what a freaking beautiful cat. Why did you actually move to Maryland?
Moved to where?
Well, you moved to Virginia or Maryland.
Yeah, because I was building an audience there. I had built up a marquee value. I could make a living.
Okay, so
and there were some good musicians I'd met who I wanted to play with.
Who were they?
Oh, well, Pete Ragusa, the drummer from the Nighthawks, was one of them. He played with me on a bunch of projects. Jimmy Thackeray on guitar played with the Nighthawks.
For sure. Is he still with us?
No. I lost contact with Jimmy Thackeray decades ago. He was living in, I think, South America.
Whoa. What about
somewhere in the country?
What about Cotton Kent?
Oh, Cotton Kent. I remember him.
I'm driving, going the Wayback Machine, dude. Dude, and Tony Randoloni?
Name sounds familiar.
Or Douglas Fagan.
Nope.
Jamie McKinnon, George Whitaker, Savoy.
Oh, yeah, George Whitaker was from Detroit. He's a trombone player.
He's a bone player. That's exactly right. What was the concept of this album? You just wanted to do some kind of disco funk album. I mean, I know it's blues, but this is like Blue-Eyed. What was the concept behind this?
Just thought I could make some good music for these guys.
Get a radio hit, right?
Huh?
Get a radio-friendly hit.
No, that wasn't it. Just make it. Yeah, but that was part of it.
I guess my going back to my original point about regional fan bases, how did it crop up that you became popular in that Mason-Dixon area?
In the D.C. area?
Yeah.
From opening shows for Little Feat, Bonnie Raitt, playing clubs. And, of course, the longer I played for, when I opened shows for Bonnie and Little Feat at different times, they were drawing, 2,000 to 3,000 fans at a show.
Sure.
So people knew who Catfish Hodge was from that.
But I want to be clear though, they came through Detroit and played on bills with you. That's how they got hip to you to begin with.
No, I don't think so with Little Feat or Bonnie. Those were all in D.C.
Right, but I mean, like, the idea is that here you are, like, basically, like, a major part of the Detroit music scene, singing for your supper, but what was the impetus to move to that area?
To the D.C. area?
Yeah.
I was building a larger fan base. There were several radio stations that were playing me. Well, there were in Detroit too.
Sure, but there were so you got wind that there were stations that were playing you in the D.C. area.
Yeah, and so I was building an audience from that.
Wow.
I went out to play a few gigs, opening for somebody or headlining a small club, and the place was packed. And they knew the songs. Dadgummit. I'm going to have to end this, man.
Yo, man. Fish, man. Bless you, brother. Much love to you.
You too. And when you finish your article and print it, let me have a copy.
Well, no, it's going to go up as an audio interview, so I need your email.
Oh, okay.
I need your email, actually.
catfishhodge@gmail.com.
Bless you, my man. Much love to you and your family.
You too, man. Take care.
Later.
Bye-bye.
All right.